Hello and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast, where we listen to people's fairy encounters. But take heed, we're not talking about winged Tinkerbells here. These are real fairies, real encounters that took people like you and I by surprise. Stay a while and hear their stories. My name is Jo Hickey Hall, and I'm a folklore researcher. Dear listener, how are you? I send you love wherever you are and whatever situation you're in. Our family's just getting over having a virus, so excuse my still slightly congested sounding voice. This episode is a continuation of a conversation with a woman who, in the last episode, described her experiences as a child, witnessing trooping fairies in her bedroom. As an adult, she's continued to have encounters, and this particular one took place at a spectacular location, a ring of ancient standing stones. As always, the locations are protected. Our guest has also described some very moving experiences which led to local fairy beings being displaced and caused her family to leave their home. These parts of the conversation are in a bonus episode available for members of Patreon. Thank you, as always, to my curious crew at Patreon, who not only generously support this project, but also each other by sharing ideas on the Discord chat and the main discussion board. If you'd like to join this community, you can find us at patreon.com/the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast. I hope you enjoy this episode. Do please contact me at scarletofthefae.com and at _remain_curious on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks. Time to
This was in 2018, and we went to this island with my husband and I and 3 other people, so 5 of us, and we stayed there for a week. And in this particular place, there is a large ring of standing stones that has about 30 20 stones standing, maybe 30 stones in all. So it's a good size. While we were there, it was over April into May. So while we were there, we'd planned to go on Walpurgis night, Beltane, to sit out at this ring of stones and see what transpired. So not all of us went. 3 of us went. Me, my husband, and the one other friend. We got there it was April 30th. So we went about 9:30. We thought, there's probably going to be quite a lot of people there. There was a few people. We watched the sunset, which was beautiful, and the moon start to rise. And it happened to be a full moon, and we couldn't believe it. So we were at this certain wonderful ring of stones. It was Beltane. The sunset was incredible. The full moon was just rising. And these 3 or 4 people that were wandering around left, and we had the place completely to ourselves.
Amazing.
Which was extraordinary in itself. So we wandered around for a bit, not inside the stones yet, but looking at them, and we decided to sit. So these stones in the ring, they're surrounded by a ditch, a ring ditch. So there's a bank that goes down into the ditch, and then you come up the bank and onto the flat level where the stones are. So on one part of the bank, on the outer part of the ditch, is a cairn. So we decided to settle ourselves in there, and we We sat there, put our blankets down, had plenty of warm clothing and things like that. And my husband went walking just to look at the outside of the stones again. Me and this other person were sitting there, and it was quite dark by now. The moon was coming up, and there was some water. It was it was a loch, and we could see the moon start to reflect in the water and shimmer as it does. And I looked at the stones, and it was very quiet. It was getting pretty dark now, and I saw this fire flickering, and it looked like it was not in the ditch itself, but a little way up the bank on the other side of the ditch toward the stones. And it was about as big as a small fireplace fire.
Yeah.
And it was the same color, and the flames are flickering. And I looked at the person with me, and I said to her, "Do you see that?" And she said, "What are you looking at?" And I said, the fire. And I said, "That small fire." She said, "Well, I don't know. I think I see something." And I knew she couldn't see it. So she was sitting right next to me. I grabbed each of her shoulders, and I physically pulled her so her head was directly in front of mine. And I said, "Look." And she said, "Oh, wow." And she could see it.
Right.
So that was two of us seeing it. And we're like, well, what is it? It can't be a fire. So we said, "Is it reflection from moonlight?" "Well, no, there's no water in that ditch. It's grass and heather." "And is it, and there was a road not very close, but I said, is it headlights that are going across on the other side of the loch?" "Well, what is ever headlights to reflect off?" So then my husband wandered back, and I said, "Can you see the fire?" And he said, "Where?" I said, "Look, stand here and look." And he could see it. He said, "Yes, I can. I see green flames." So two of us were seeing it in regular colored fire flames, and he was seeing it in green. So we said, okay, and it was about, I don't know, it was probably getting on for 11 o'clock by now, something like that. So we decided to go and look. So we walked, it was dark now. We walked through, we went down the bank into the ditch to where it was, and it disappeared. So we'd marked sort of where it was, and we had a torch, from your phone, your mobile phone, put that on. We're looking for anything that could have reflected some sort of cellophane bag or a bottle or something that someone sort of left there. There was absolutely nothing. It was just grass and heather. So we were pretty astounded about that. So we carried on walking up the bank. We decided to go now and walk around the ring of stones. And so we started walking to the left, clockwise, and we're walking slowly. My husband went ahead, and the two of us were walking quite slowly, and I knew there was someone to the left of us. And I saw a figure about 3 feet high. So a meter high. I know what 3 feet's about, a meter.
Yeah.
And this was a dark figure, thin, long-limbed. I couldn't really see features. And I said to my friend, I said to her, "There's someone escorting us or following us, sort of just maybe a pace behind us to the left and about 2 yards away." And then we heard it. She said, "I hear it." And so we carried on walking. We were looking at the stones, and we walked all the way around. We stood and felt some of the stones. We came all the way around, and we caught up with my husband, and we just took our time. We were having a lovely time. The moon was coming up. It was just perfect. No one else around in this beautiful circle of stones. So we came back to the point where we'd entered, and our friend said to my husband, "What time is it?" So he looked at his watch and he said, it's just coming up to 1:15. And we went, what? It can't be. We haven't been up in the circle for 2 hours. And he showed us, he said, look, it's just coming up to 1:15. And we're like, there's no way it's 1:15. And so the friend said, well, if it is, maybe we need to, go think about going back to where we're staying, and they'll be wondering where we are. The other two will wonder where we are. So we went down the ditch, down the bank into the ditch, up the other bank, and started to walk towards the cairn where we set up our little base for sitting out. And as we started to walk on the outside of the stones, on the other side of the ditch, on the bank, I knew there was someone following us and escorting us. Well, not really escort, but following us. And this was a different being,
right?
Very, very tall. I'd say possibly 12 to 15 feet tall,
right.
Huge. And I stopped and I turned to my friend and I said, there's someone right behind us, and he is huge. He's really tall. And she looked rather panicked. She said, we need to go now. And she started to walk pretty rapidly ahead. And I said, wait. And I turned around and I couldn't see the figure. I knew that entity was there. And I just looked up like I would be looking at someone's face. And I said, thank you. And I turned around and then we walked. And by this time, she was really hurrying up, trying to hurriedly picking everything up, the lantern we'd taken, everything, picking the rugs up. And she started booking it for the car down the road. She wasn't running, but she was walking striding as fast as possible. Yeah. So because she was driving, we were catching up with her. We really didn't, we either went with her or stayed the rest of the night. So we went with her and we got in the car. And I have a habit of, when things like that happen, I get in the car, I sit in the car, I get in backwards.
Okay.
I don't turn my back and get in the car.
Yes.
I turn and sit down backwards in the car and then close the door.
Good tip.
So we're in the car and we start driving. She looks at the dash and she said, it's not 1:15. She said, it's only just past midnight. And my husband said, what? And he looked again and he said, oh my God, you're right. He goes, but I showed you when we were in the ring and it was 1:15 in the morning.
How bizarre.
So there was some kind of
time warp.
I don't know if there was missing time, but there was definitely time warp in that circle. And that whole episode is so outstanding to me as anything else I've ever really experienced. It was incredible not only to see what I termed fairy fire, and two of us to see it in regular fire color, and the third person see it as green.
Yes.
But also the whole time warp at these two different entities.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that is absolutely extraordinary. It really is.
It was extraordinary itself that we had the whole place to ourselves.
Yeah.
At Beltane with a full moon. Couldn't believe it.
Just amazing. And the fire, I'm trying to imagine how big it would have been.
So if you have a regular hearth in your house, it's not a huge one, it's not like an ingle nook, it's just, say if, the gas fires that look like real fires, you know how big they are.
Yeah.
The flames were about that size. Yes. It was about that big.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and it lasted for ages. I mean, we were there looking at it for a good 20 minutes, trying to figure out what it was
Mm.
before we decided to walk out down into the ditch and onto the other bank and try to figure out what was going on.
Yeah. That is amazing, isn't it? And what kind of sense did you get from the fire?
Absolute amazement.
Yeah.
I felt honored to be seeing it.
Mm.
I felt like it was, here I am, here we're getting your attention. Hello, we're here, over here. It was like, it was like an invitation.
Yeah.
And it wasn't headlights. It wasn't reflection of the moon. The moon was reflected in the water, the loch, over to the southeast.
Mm-hmm.
This was facing north.
Yeah.
We were looking north at the ring.
And the fire was in the south.
No, the fire was in the north, because the ring was in the north, and the fire was on the far bank before you got to the ring, into the ring itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, your entranceway into the ring then, really.
Yes, I guess so.
Yeah. And the smaller figure, what kind of feeling did you get from them? Healing has helped me many times in my life when I'd reached a point where something needed to change. In 2005, I trained with Martin Brofman to learn the body mirror system of healing, which was life-changing for me. It's based on the idea that the parts of your body that don't work well reflect the parts of your life that don't work well, and about which you have tension in your consciousness. The understanding is that tension is stress, and stress causes symptoms. In a distance healing or in-person session, I move up the chakras, returning each one to wholeness using a colour map. During the process, I see images and situations, I hear words or receive impressions that tell me something about what caused the tension in that person's life. The feedback at the end of the session is a really big part of the healing. If you're interested in a chakra healing session, you can contact me at scarletofthefae@gmail.com.
An escort.
Yeah.
Just watching, escorting us, making sure we behaved ourselves, I believe. Like a runner between, someone who carries information between one party and the other.
Yeah. And the taller one, what do you think they were?
I think he was a guardian.
Yeah.
Of that particular space. Absolutely. He was huge.
That is absolutely fascinating. Really beautiful experience also to share with your friend and your husband. What did they make of it?
They were astounded. My husband doesn't see much or experience much very often, and he's a Virgo, so he has to try to understand it, to fully experience it, and he treasures that experience, but he can't explain it.
Yeah.
And I think it troubles him being so. I mean, he's like a triple Virgo. It's crazy. He can't explain it practically, mundanely.
Yeah.
He really treasures that experience that we had.
I bet. Yeah, that's just great that you can have that memory of that together. Did anything happen around that time? You know, in your lives after that, was there anything that you think shifted at all? Any sort of blessing or any other kind of shift?
I hesitate to talk about this, Joe, because it is to do with a certain group, a small group, exclusive group that I started to become, and actually became very close to. Things didn't work out, but for about 2 years just after that time, I became, and my husband too, we became very close to that person and her husband. And it was a huge, it was a very, very intense time.
Mm, mm.
Um,
Yeah, experienced something quite intense personally afterwards.
yes. And then was pushed away from it.
Okay.
But that has happened to me periodically through life. I will spend something happens, and there's a period following that's very intense of a couple of years or so, and then I'm propelled away from it.
Yeah. So do you feel like, the intense period you experienced was kind of linked with that afterwards?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the friend who was with us that night was also had been friends with
close to that.
these people for some time.
It's interesting when you get close to something and see it for what it really is. Sometimes you have a realization as well, and decide to step away from it. Even
I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's great that you and your husband sound like a really nice, strong partnership. So would you like to go back there, do you think?
We've been back
to
twice after that. Been on holiday there again twice. We even contemplated, when we were looking for somewhere we wanted to move to, we had taken that into account as a place, a possibility, that island, but we decided to stay more on the mainland. It was not as accessible that it had been when we went back the year afterwards.
Yeah, this is the trouble, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's really frustrating. Did you listen to, also on the podcast, there is an episode, The Tall Folk and the Little People. It's a guy at the he was camper vanning around Ireland, and
yes. Oh,
and he
my
spoke about
episode.
The Guardian. Yes. I love that one too.
What an incredible experience for him.
Absolutely amazing.
He must have freaked when that little old lady came and knocked on his.
So funny. That's so typical, isn't it? I really love that. They do seem as if they take some kind of guardian form of the place, of the landscape, and hold that sort of energy about them.
The one I experienced, I was actually driving, and it was Midsummer's Eve. I was coming back to where we were living, coming that way. And as I drove across the edge, the sun had set, so it was quite late at night. It was about 10:30, and I could just feel it in the air as I was driving. And I was going to stop and have a walk because it was just twilight, still quite light. And I decided just to stay in my car and keep going. Don't stop, just go. I mean, that was a huge entity.
And just around near where you were driving?
Across. This is an area that's been well known for various groups who used to like to go up there and practice. It's popular with dog walkers. It's not so amazing anymore. I think it used to be back in the day. There are caves under there.
Right.
That used to be mined way back.
Yeah.
And until recent times.
So many interesting experiences.
I seem to experience a lot when I'm near a cairn or a stone circle. There's a recumbent stone circle. I think it's Derbyshire, Staffordshire, more. And I used to go there quite a lot when I lived in Cheshire. And I used to like to sit out on. Again, it has one cairn on the raised bank. As you look down this time onto the stones, not up. And I used to, sometimes I've gone to sleep on it during the day on a summer's day. I used to love that. But at night, when I've been with friends there and sitting out, I was standing up talking to them, and I turned around, and where on the street when you almost bump into someone and you go, oh,
Yeah.
you know, this was a figure a little bit taller than me, and it was just a black figure.
Yeah. Just right
And
there.
apparently people have seen them there as well. So there's a lot to be experienced at Cairns and Rings.
Most definitely.
Dolmens.
Yeah, I'm so drawn to those places. I really miss being able to just nip in the car and go to the Dolmen down the road in Jersey. We're 15 minutes from one here, but it just doesn't quite feel the same really, but I do like going there as well. We've got Stanton Drew within about a 15-minute drive, which is the second biggest stone circle after Avebury in the UK. So that's that's pretty big. But in Jersey, the one where I had my fairy sighting, that was very close to a dolmen, and there's been lots of UFO activity over that dolmen as well, that area. So it seems to draw these kind of energies too.
It does. The Peak District has a lot of UFO activity, and they sort of seem to go hand in hand. I said once to a friend who said, I wonder if it's because the fairies now have high tech. You know, we progress in our technology. Why shouldn't they? And the one friend poo-pooed it, but the one I'd said it to said, yeah, well, why not?
What do you think? Do you think that they could be one and the same, fairies and let's call them aliens or extraterrestrials?
I don't know. I think there are so many different entities that I just don't know. The jury is out. I've considered it. I can't give you a definite yes or no. I'm still mulling that over, if they're the same or not. There seems to be a lot of characteristics that are similar, because you see Arthur Rackham's illustrations of gnomes, and then you see people's modern day illustrations of extraterrestrials they've seen, and they're very comparable.
Yeah.
The long skinny limbs and thin bodies, and
yes.
I just don't know. Is it just the way we're looking at it? Have they always been extraterrestrial or extra dimensional aliens, or that people just called fairies, gnomes, dwarves, or I don't know. Or you know, are aliens just a modern take on fairies, gnomes, dwarves, trowers, etc.?
It's really one of the big questions, isn't it? And to me, they kind of feel different. They feel different. The gnomes and pixies, they feel terrestrial to me. I have no idea, absolutely no idea at all. Just going on sort of what it feels. But then, and you know, the kind of the more extraterrestrial stuff feels very different than the kind of earthy beings.
I think I know what you mean, because for want of a better name, let's call them fairies, gnomes, dwarves, land wights. To me, they are, you know, the Anglo-Saxon term wights, the spirits connected to the land and the winds and the elements. The fairies, gnomes, dwarves, they definitely seem connected to plants, trees, places, as you said, to the earth.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe we will know one day.
Might not be too far away.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of interest in this area at the moment, and people are, you know, like yourself, opening up and talking about this. So thank you so much for talking about this, because it, you know, people hear this and, you know, there's a lot of what you've said, and as I say, it just resonates with me, and I have such chills down my back you know, hearing it, because it rings true, and it's just so important to be able to hear that, to hear someone talking about something that you've experienced but you've questioned yourself over.
It
you know,
does feel
because
good to share
it really
similar
does.
experiences with others. It really does.
Yeah, it's a massive relief because, you know, when you talk to your friends and family or whatever, and you know, it's very hard for other people to understand if they haven't experienced anything like that themselves. And yeah, so it's just so thank you very much. It's been really
You're
great to
very
talk.
welcome. Very welcome, Jo. It's been
Yeah.
fun.
Time to renovate, transmutate. Time to renovate.
Big thanks to our guest for sharing her story. The encounter was beautifully set. Beltane at an ancient stone circle, which by pure fate was left to be experienced alone by her party. I have often found this to be the case when visiting accessible ancient sites for introspection. The timing is never purposeful, but it often works out that you'll be the only one there, and once your meditation or ritual is over, you find the next person walking towards the site just as you walk away. Always seems like divine timing. Beltane itself, known in some places more widely as May Day, is an ancient pagan festival marking the beginning of summer when cattle would return to pastures. It marked a celebration of fertility as the land warms and yields once more, and couples are invited to jump the Beltane fires together, invoking passion and potency. For our guest and her friends on that evening, a Beltane fire flickered some way off, but when they approached it, it disappeared. Nothing was quite what it seemed. Was it a symbolic ritual fire from an other world? Were they seeing through a time slip? A fire from the past? It's interesting to note that later that evening they experienced time warping. Some may say that they had initially misread the time, but all three checked the watch, and it was only when they'd got back to the car that they found the time had shifted. And what of the guardians of the stones? The first is experienced as some kind of escort, a smaller being that accompanied the two women. Then later came one of the tall folk whom we've heard described on previous episodes. You can check the show notes for those previous episodes, but they are the tall folk and the little people and a maelstrom of fairies. These beings appear to perform guardianship roles in the outer edges of sacred sites, such as ancient forests and dolmens. They actively observe or move people along by making their authoritarian nature known. There's no mistaking them once you've encountered them. It's also of note that our guest is a multiple experiencer. For whatever reason we don't yet understand, some people experience strange encounters all their lives. They're able to see through the veil more easily. They seem able to maintain a connection to the other world that most other people seem to lose through societal indoctrination. It takes strength, insight, and courage to see the world in a different way to others and maintain what is true for you. If you are one of these people, know that you're certainly not alone. In these strange times, many listeners are finding these shares helpful. I certainly am. I think about the nature of the universe and of human nature, what constitutes reality and what is veiled, how we connect to one another, to nature itself, and to the many beings that we share this universe with. Do they understand our suffering? Are we experiencing them in greater numbers of encounters because they've come to help? I don't know the answer to any of these questions, but I can't help but reflect on these tall guardian entities who protect sacred sites. I like to imagine that there are certain beings, be they angels or higher energy beings, who stand at the edges of our sacred material world, ready to remove those who would misuse their authority to do harm to humankind, if we would only ask them to assist. Perhaps, if it feels right to do so, we can call upon them to help where they can, if it be for the good of all. So mote it be. It helps to know that we're connected with one another and we're part of a community exploring this together. Through difficult times, we can keep the faith and remain curious.